Okay, so I've gone for this really lovely, kind of relaxing, quite cozy, isn't it? Picture here. And I am going to just kind of sketch it out. Now, you can be incredibly loose with watercolor, and you can actually try and do it without putting any marks in there at all, and that would be absolutely fine. But if you want to make sure, for example, that you can kind of get everything in, then you can start to kind of to map it out. So I am actually just going to do exactly that. I'm going to use this grid. This really helps a lot of people actually getting into the habit. Oops. So I'm going to divide this bit of paper up as well, this page, as the best I can. Now, if I'm doing anything with pencil with watercolour, I want to make sure it's really, really nice and light. Otherwise, I won't be able to get rid of the lines afterwards. And if you don't want any lines on there, it's good to kind of have it nice and light so you can just rub them out. So I think that one of the big things we have to think about with watercolour is it's the absolute reverse of what we've been doing the last few weeks. It's the reverse of how we apply pastels. It's a reverse of how we apply anything like acrylics as well, because we tend to, block out, and we can put those and finish up with those lighter layers on top. Unfortunately, with watercolor, we don't really use white in that way, and it doesn't cover in the same way either. So you might sometimes be able to get away with a little bit if you're using a tubed white to be able to kind of pop it on more thickly, almost a bit like acrylic. But generally, if we want to kind of wash things down, what we need to be doing is leaving a space for anything that's white or very light coloured, and not painting it over it at all. And that can be quite challenging at times. So there are other ways of doing it, which we'll go into actually in the next block, where we can use, and you can do this if you've got it handy, you can do this anyway, where you put, when we start to pop these items in, you can then apply like, it's like a gum. People call it gum Arabic, where you paint it on, and then you can paint over, and it'll leave that white when you peel it off afterwards. So you can do that. Masking fluid is what it's called as well. I'm not using masking fluid in this one. I'm just going to use my eye and kind of build up. So we've just got to remember to leave the lightest. And also we work in reverse with watercolour in that we tend to work from lightest to darkest. So we work in the opposite direction, and that's so we can build up the pigment, and then we don't make those errors with it going over the top, etc. Because we can't really put the white watercolor in there, but we can use white quite nicely to make things a bit more pastel-y in color, which is a great way of using them. Or we can make our paints really thin, but we'll come to that in a mo. So I'm going to get this, start to look at what's at the back here. Now the lights are the bit that are more complex, which is why I'm going to actually draw out where I'm going to leave those. So I think if I get this, I might actually put where this book comes to, and we can use obviously a grid, we can use really quite well for that. I've just got some straight card here, so I know with this book the corner comes just above the line that I'm working on here, and it comes right down to this corner almost there. So, and again, if I want to check angles and things, I'm just transfer it from there to there, and if I've gone a little bit, if my angle's gone a bit out, which it seems to have done a little bit there, a bit steeper, maybe I need to bring it in a little bit here. Then yeah, okay, maybe it just comes out a little bit slightly further in this one because of the dimension of my of my piece of paper. And then obviously this one comes kind of round. Can surprise you some of the angles on it as well. So I'm bringing this line in, I'm just kind of mapping it out there. and then bring it a bit further, and then as we get to the middle, it comes over and then comes up a little bit, doesn't it, there? I've got this book here, I've got my tape over the bottom bit of my paper there. And then again, we're looking at how far out it comes. I'm just going to check that again myself. Let me move that back in. It's making me think, shall I check this angle as well? Because I've not quite got that other one today. There we go. Yeah, that comes over. It takes up like almost all the space, doesn't it, there? Just double check that one. Okay, yeah, I was out on that one. That's why that doesn't feel quite right. And then we can get the I'm going to go under there. And then just checking the angle up here, which goes almost to the top, doesn't it, of there. So I'm looking, if yours goes under your tape, don't worry about it. We can kind of fill that in. And then again, we're kind of going back up here. So I'm looking at how far it comes out. And when we've got the pages and things open and folded, it can be quite confusing as well. But if you look here, it does actually go inwards on both sides. So if it feels a bit strange, it's because the angle is a little bit strange on there. It's quite. There we go. And then there we go. Just get some of these pages in. So I'm looking at how far up these come as well. So each of these set of pages, and again, if you're not sure on the angle of the pages, just follow the line across. It should, as she says, kind of follow along with this one, but because this one's curved, it may not, it may just be the edge of it. And then I'm going to pop the line in of where I think the middle is, which kind of comes to this side. So we're just proportionally working out whereabouts we think it should come. I know it's this side in this quarter, and that comes straight down like that. Let's just try it again. So that's the angle. Okay. There we go. And then we can follow this up above the line as well. Only goes a little while, doesn't it, there? And then we get the top page that comes over like this, over the top, and then it comes just underneath there. And then we've got this flat bit because there's a gap, isn't there, here where the pages kind of come. So I need to move that across a little bit as well. So it just starts to help us see what's going on. And it's still, it still looks odd because I've got the edge of the book as well to pop in at the end here. So yeah, so I'm just going to bring in a little bit of the space there where these pages end, and we get the end of the page looks huge at the moment. And that's a bit further down that way as well. This one needs to kind of go that way a bit. And this is what we do, we're just adjusting it. It's just right, sometimes it's easy when you've got quite a lot of things in still life to kind of make sure you can fit everything on before you do it. Whereas with say a landscape in watercolors, which is what we're going to do next block, it's very different in the way that sometimes we don't need to put hardly anything in, or we put things in over the top last minute. So we've got the gap there where that comes, where that page is. And we are, and then we've got these other pages here. So we're looking at this one, how far up it comes. It actually comes almost to the top there, look, doesn't it? So it's over halfway in this bit, in this quarter. So if we did have a halfway mark, then We're going up with it. And again, you know, we can see how far over it comes as well. And it's about halfway across, isn't it? It's almost just above the middle here. I'm going to move down my expectation of where it comes as well to about here. So I'm going to bring that down with a nice sweep, that page, and it all starts to make a little bit more sense to us. There we go. It all looks a bit out of shape, doesn't it, up until then? And then we can see that this page twists as well. So I think that's the tricky bit. So this is the middle centre line, which is the bit I've joined up there. And then this page comes across, kind of across the centre line and twists out just here. So let's see if we can get that one in. Yeah. So we're starting to get, you know, this edge of the book that twists over, which makes it look a funny shape. And then we've just got this page then to bring back down in a curve to where it goes. But actually, if you see here, it doesn't go right down to the bottom. That's where these, you know, it can throw things a little bit when you've got a twist in something. But we've got a gap here before this one appears to come. It comes down to there, and then the bottom of the page comes. It's just the angle we're looking at it. So I would want to pop a little bit of that as though it's appearing like that, and then we have a look. So I'm looking at the angle here just for an idea. Yeah, it's more or less on the same. So we're twisting that down. And I might find I've got to come a little bit further with that. So don't worry if, you know, this first time when you're kind of having to go at mapping things out, it doesn't look entirely accurate. We're just going to have a little play with that and see how it goes. And then we've got this one coming out. So I can see already I need to put that, move my book along a little bit. It's not going to fit on there. So this bit here, this line here, fits within here somewhere. And comes out a little bit, and then it comes down there. Looking from down the own rubber. I'm just going to clear some of this edge here that I put in earlier. Adjust it. And then I'm going to look at this bit here as well. So I know that this edge is coming out there. And I know that that one's kind of coming that way, but what I need to look at is where it comes up to here. So this page comes down and it starts above the halfway line here. It's really interesting, isn't it, how it all fits in? And then again, we get this swooping down. If you're not sure of the angle again, just have a little look. It's more or less kind of a little bit straight and then it's coming over. So it's a little bit straight and coming over. Like that, and then it's coming right down to the bottom of the book there. So we're starting to get a feel that things are a little bit more 3D there. Move that page over a little bit. So you can, you know, you can get rid of any little marks or anything as you're going, if that helps as well. I'm just kind of working out where things go. So we've got this page that still turns up here. And then we would hope we can join the edge, you know, Yeah, that's all parallel. That all should be parallel down there, more or less. I'm just going to put temporary line in just to make sure. We'll just make it slightly longer if we want to. And then the rest of the book, we can see that those pages are on an angle going downwards. But you can just see underneath. We know that there are lots of pages, don't we? They're going down like that. And then we can look at this fabulous, the underside. We haven't got all the underside of this book here either, have we, this side? Because I've not done the page, I've not done the flatness. So I've done the bottom of the page, but not how this particular page curls up from the bottom. So once we start to get a few of those little details in, we start to see what's going on with it a little bit more. It doesn't feel such an odd shape with all the little bits missing. And then we've got this one. Here it comes down. And over the top, we've got a little gap between the pages there, which come down just ever so slightly further. And then we can see, you know, we've got all, it kind of joins up with the other pages in here. You don't really need to show every individual page, though. Sometimes you get a little step book where there's a few. So got this one in, and then starting to look at, you know, I can fill those details in anyway with my brush, where we've got some darker, where you get some gaps in the pages where they're coming back down. Just there, and that's probably enough to show. And then we've still got the edge of the book in there, in amongst those papers. And then these papers, you know, they just come down, don't they? Step by step at the edge there. And then the same at the edge here. And then we can just pop, once you've got your step of papers in here, like that. Then we can just get the edge of the book in as well. And then, you know, we're quite on the way then to thinking about how everything works. And we'll fill those details in as we go. Yeah, so that's really nice. I'm just going to move this book end of the book in again a little bit. I think what we've got is we've got a little shadow on the edge of that there. We've got a step of the edge of the pages here at this side. And then we've got the book. We can't quite see under the blanket there. That feels a bit better now. It's all a bit of a mystery in this corner. So at this point, I would just get rid of some of these lines as well that we've popped in. Actually, we might leave that in a little bit in the mug. Yeah, so I mean, proportionally, I always find it really interesting how much, because sometimes when you look at something, you don't realise how much room one item can take up, which is really handy. And then I would think about popping in the next bit, the next bigger chunk here, which is this mug. So I'm looking at, you know, how far out the mug comes. In fact, it does go round there. With this, if we want to get the rim on, that'll help us a lot actually with leaving the light top, where the light catches on the very top there. So with the things like ellipses, when I say ellipses, it's just a curve. you know, some, if you look, depending on the angle you're looking at it, if you're looking at directly over the top, it's a wide, you know, it's almost circular, isn't it? But what you can do is just, you know, hold, I think I've shown this before, but hold hold something straight halfway across, and then you can see that kind of gives you an idea of how deep the ellipsis is, and it's not very deep, is it, that at all? And then the other half underneath it, it's not. So some are really, you know, have a really deep ellipsis, but the way we're looking at it, so you can always do that. It's a little trick, is to kind of hold it halfway over and just try and replicate how far it kind of goes. It's quite, I've got quite a gentle curve, and then the same on the top. If you want him to do that, you can have a go, and then you can take it off, and if it doesn't make sense, you can just adjust it. But it's just a little trick for thinking about the curves and how deep they are. See, mine at the bottom of this is needs a little bit more of a curve on, I think, than it's got. And then the edge of it is a little bit rounder as well. But it's just, as I said, just practice, have a little go. The more ellipses you do, the more familiar you get with them, really. There we go. So I'm going to be fine with that for the most. So the mugs, you know, again, you can see where the centre line is. That one comes in a little bit. So if you're looking at straight line up, always look at the, see if it's a straight line and it comes leans slightly in that side. That one's straighter, but it does go in slightly. That one's got a more of a lean because the way we're looking at it. So I'm going to lean that one in. And then make sure I bring the, and again, so quite often what you find is the base has a similar and sometimes identical ellipsis to the top. It just depends on whether it, you know, it's got a little bit that kind of drops away or not, and it's more steep. So I'm just popping that behind, mainly behind the book, but then it does come out again, doesn't it? And again, I'm just going to fact check, is it that? Okay, I've gone quite a bit further in than I need to, so I'm just going to bring that back out again. And then this one is quite straight to this side, but just a tiny lean. And then you can see, I mean, I don't like to do much rubbing out, to be fair. Still life is probably, with watercolour, is probably the most I would do. Because what we don't want to do is get into this cycle of getting really, really concerned and almost a bit obsessed with if it's right. Because really, we're still going to be doing our artist impression. It's only really just to kind of get a start on it. There we go. Right, and then we do have this, you know, lovely handle on there. And again, you know, you can do the outer rim if you want to. I tend to stick with one and stick with it and get a bit confusing, so I'm going to follow that outer rim all the way. There we go. And then I'll follow the inner one. So this one, you only get like a change if it kind of flip. You can't then see the top there, and we can just see this side. So it's got, you know, we've got the inner, the outer, and then there might be a middle centre one as well. So we're just following this inner one around wherever it goes to. We can always kind of put the changes in after. It might get thinner in one place and then come back out again. A bit wider here. So, you know, once we're painting, I'm not going to actually put in any more of those details. I'm just going to follow the shade around the shadow, which is on the edge and then gets bigger, and then keep the light area light on the top and then on the side. So because the area I mean, if you're working on A4 or bigger, you could probably pop that in if you wanted to, but mine's too tiny to pop that in at the moment. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to make my cup make sense, if that makes sense itself. Just going to get this tight edge off here. And then we've got this very light colour. So first of all, I'm going to pop in this inner rim here that we can see. And again, that one follows the top, or when it follows that ellipsis all the way around like that, which is quite helpful until it gets to the edges. And then we can just see where we think it goes there. And then you can, what I would probably suggest we put in, this camera's looking a little bit funny on there, it's a bit better. What I would suggest then is bring that one out a little bit. Is to put this little rim on here on the top that's very light coloured. And when we look at it, it comes all the way around here, because this is the bit we want to leave light. And we bring it and it comes in a little bit. And then we get the light on the top as well. So if we can kind of pop how it starts again there as well, it just means when we start to leave the lighter areas, we'll make sure that we leave that nice and a light, a light colour, so it stays white. Okay. I'm not going to put any detailing in, I'm just going to do that as I go with my brush. Even the words on the page, we can really make it what we want is a hint that there's words there. So there's lots of different ways we can kind of express that. Then we've got obviously this blanket here. And again, I'm probably not going to put too much info. What I am going to do is these wires, because I need to keep these nice and bright and light. So, each area we can work into it with lighter getting darker, and we can control that. But if we've got something overlapping, like these little lamps, these little fairy lights, then I would probably pop those just where they go in. So I'm just bringing that blanket round. This is now where it's going to get a little bit easier for us. I'll take this line out now. Bring this blanket round. And again, we can kind of pop little curves and things on it that we want to anyway. So it doesn't have to be identical. We just want a general feel that there's this cozy, what we're trying to replicate is this cozy book area. And then we've got some folds in there. Just going to pop a few of those coming round. There's a big fold over here, so I'm going to try and get that one in. It comes over and over that middle centre line as well. We're just popping a few, and it'll look a bit strange at this point because when we get the depth in the darker colours, that's when it starts to make sense. And then I'm going to pop these lights in because I really don't want to go into those. So I'm just going to pop in just whereabouts, where we've got this light head here. And it may even just pop a little bit of a little area around it. It reminds me that I'm going to put that light, that glow on the table. You don't have to do that though. And again, I've got a couple of wires, but I'm going to make a suggestion with these wires. I'm not going to do like loads of lots and lots and lots of wires. I'm just going to get a suggestion. There's a wire there. I'm going to pop this one in as well. There we go. And then we've got a little bit of a twist here, haven't we? So I'm going to just replicate something here going on. Doesn't need to be anything too complicated. And then wherever else I can see a light, I'm just going to pop that one in. I don't know if that's like a cushion or something, but we've got something going on there, haven't we? There's a light reflected on it. And then we've got another, these little fairy lights, which are lovely. And then a bit of a wire going over. Another one going behind this fold here. So this is how we can break this down quite simply, really, by just popping where we can see another one. There's another one there. And I'm just putting a tiny bit of a little circle around it. And another wire going over. There we go. And then we've got loads of things going on there. But you don't need to overcomplicate. I mean, and actually this would be a bit of a suggestion because there's all sorts. So I'm just going to pop in a couple more lights. Can't really see what's going on there. So we just want a suggestion when we're painting that. Same up here, there's all sorts of things going on over there, isn't there? So again, we don't need to make it's in the distance. We don't want it if we put loads and loads of because it's a bit fuzzy, if we make it really clear, it'll jump forwards anyway. So it's quite good just having this little kind of an idea of what's going on rather than too much complicating it. And then there's another one there that's shining on that glass behind it. I'll pop that one in. And then with this here, you can just, if there's another couple of folds that you want to pop in, you can do that. So we've got this fold here, haven't we? And then the bottom of that fabric comes over. You can actually, if we're not careful, end up tying ourselves in knots over it. So, and then another little fold there. Just really so when I start painting it in, you can see where the dark bits are. But we can do that as well. You don't have to do it all. You don't have to plan all that bit out. Another little bit of stitching that goes over there, another little bit of stitching. Something going on over here, I'm not quite sure. And then we've got this other glass coming behind it, which is lovely. We'll get that one in. So this glass takes up most of, so within this quarter here, you can see that that glass takes up that pretty much that whole quarter there. This bit here. So again, it's a different ellipsis. The bottom of this glass almost, well, it does end, doesn't it, where the page is behind here, and it comes in, get part of it behind, glass behind this this glass here. And then we've got it goes off the top of the page anyway, doesn't it? So we can just look again at what we think, how deep we think that ellipsis is. There we go. There we are. And then again, we can see, we can see some of the lights and things there. You see, look, I've got that totally wrong where I've put that one because it actually doesn't come right over here, but we'll put another one in. And then there's some nice glow, isn't there? Behind, I think it's coming around and behind the light. And then there's one under here. So always beautiful things. I think really the mapping out of this takes longer than the actual painting of it, to be fair. It's worth doing it. And then a few more of those lovely lights, a few of the, and again, it's quite, you can see them, and that looks like almost the beginning of the lights there. But it's just a suggestion. We kind of can see something there, we can see something here, we can see a light coming down there that's quite bright, and another one here. And we'll be able to kind of choose the things that we do, choose the colours that we put in for that as well. Yeah. There we go. So I've popped the rim on again just so we can keep that nice and light, and then we can get the darker colours in behind it as well, where the back is, probably the edge of the table or something there. I'm just looking what else is there really. Well, there's a bit, you can, I suppose there's a wooden area, but I will do that as we go, really. So I think this is the main, chunk so that we can keep, deciding on keeping some areas light. So I'll just take a pause, see everyone's getting on with that bit. Okay, so once you've kind of got as much as you want or as little as you want, because obviously you can put a lot less on, it's just thinking about the colours, and I would really recommend colour testing with this because I do think watercolour is one of the ones that, again, where you just don't quite know what it's going to come out like. So whichever, the beauty of doing a still life like this, where we've got areas, is that you end up with very separate parts of your painting. So you can actually work on one thing independently at a time of another. The only thing I'd say where we've got these things crossing over here is we need to tackle the light to dark over here as well, because it overlaps. But everything else, pretty much, we can build each of these areas up. So what we need to be thinking about, whichever thing you decide to start with, whether it's the background or whether it's whether it's your mug or your book, is within that, what we need to do is mix up some of the different tones in there. And if we're doing a large area in a similar tone, then we need to mix up enough so that we're doing it. So, and then the other thing is, because whichever area we're doing, even if we're doing the table and we want to work, we're going to be working light to dark, it may well be that some colours will blend. Some colours you might want to let, what we call it, bleeding into another colour. So I'm just going to, for example, show you like a warmy red in here, just as an example, so I've not got mixing yet. So I'm just taking that palette here and I'm just kind of getting some pigment off with some water on my brush and popping it into one of these wells. So this is hence the reason for testing. So that is really strong colour. It's not watered down at all. But I can, if I want to make it much, much less intense, then I just add lots of water to it. And it's, see already it's starting to thin down. And I'm obviously going on this because when you're totally new to a material, it's really helpful to know. So we can go, you can go really thin with it, and then you can test like your colour, and then you can see how much more thin. So that's more watery. So the more watery it is, it takes a bit longer to dry, especially if you're in a room that takes, it's not too warm or whatever. So we've got to decide, what kind of tone. So we can still mix up the paints. We can still add. I've gone for that kind of reddy brown for this colour to think about doing the backgrounding. That's what I like. But you could even add in, if you think, oh, it's a bit more pinky than that, then by all means, just let me move this around so I don't get it stuck on there. By all means, you can add, whatever you've got in your kit, like a reddy colour to it. Just going to see if that's the right one. That's a crimson. See, that's an alizarin crimson. I think I might add a bit of that into it. So there'll be different kinds of colours in your kit that'll make. So like a bright red, if you drop it in, it's going to make a very different colour to, say, a crimson, an alizarin crimson, which is a bit more kind of purpley blue, pinky blue based colour. So I'm going to mix a bit of that in, see what happens. But I'm still going to make sure it's not too thick. So that was my colour I did earlier there. This has just got a tiny bit more pink in it. So even if with watercolour, we're thinking about what colour tones that we've got there. So if I spread this out a little bit like that, I'm happy with that for the lighter areas. So I'm going to make sure I've got plenty mixed up, and I'm also then going to mix up some of the shadows here, these slightly kind of darker colours. So I'm going to go and try and get this bit of background, some of this bit of background around this book in here. But I'm going to just thinking about avoiding these lighter areas up here. So what have we got in the kit? So I'm going to go for drop in. Just going to drop in slightly warm, slightly darker brown in there. Just for some of the areas that's slightly a bit darker, but darker than that because it's a little bit ochre-y, which is a bit more of the yellow base than it is. Let's have a look. So you may have one or you may have more colour browns there. So it depends on whether you're looking for a really much darker tone or this one that's it's a more yellowy brown, you see, so that's quite dark in there. So I'm just going to go see if I can find another brown, because I forget each time I use this set what colours I've got in there, because I can never tell looking at the actual colour what it's going to come out like, because they look really dark. Ah, that's a bit better, so that's really dark. I don't want to go that dark, but I'd like a mixture of this one, this dark brown. And this is part of the process of the enjoyable bit of it, is working out what colours you want to put in. So within that brown there, there we go. I'm happy now. I've got this kind of reddy brown colour. So I'm just going to leave that on the side. So I've got a couple of things. So there's also a few tricks you can do. So sorry, just to demonstrate on here, going back to what I was saying, that you might want two colours side by side. And you can allow for, sometimes you want them to kind of come together and make a little bit of a seamless join. But some colours will run into the others and make them quite muddy. So it's really a fine balance. And this is all about the experimentation, because watercolour is different, really different every time you do it. So everybody will say it's probably the most unreliable one of the most unreliable mediums, but one that's, you can get all sorts of different effects with. So if you're wanting it to bleed a little bit, just go up tentatively to the edge and then start to kind of blend it and see and if it starts to run too much because it's too, each area is too wet and you don't want it to blend, then you can always just take it off a little bit, take it out a little bit with a bit of tissue paper. I've just got tissue. And likewise, say we're doing this area here and you think, oh, well, actually, I want to just take a little bit of that colour out because there's a real shine on that table. Again, we can do those kinds of things. You can kind of just go in and just start to lift out where the shine is like that. I'll show you on there. So that's exactly what I'm going to do with this area here that's got a bit highlighted in it. You can also, so I was saying about the card, if you've got a card, an old like store card, whilst it's like not soaking wet, but when it's drying, you can also take out. So if I wanted to get that effect over the top, leave a plastic one actually. Use a ruler, or you could use the end of an old paintbrush if you wanted. If you do it gently, you can kind of scratch out, and that's still too wet. That's dry. I think I actually need, the problem is I've got a paper card one. If you've got a proper plastic one, you can start to kind of almost scratch out gently some of those colours and leave the white behind. Yeah, I've not got the right card with me today, but you can try that anyway yourself with a harder card if you want to. And we can take out, so we can lift out some of those lighter colours with a card, scratch them out. It's quite interesting. So there's all sorts of things we can do to lift out the colour if we go over an area that should be lighter than it should be. And then as we work in there, we can start to add in some darker ones as well and make those really much, much darker. So I would go right under there with this really dark brown that I've been using as well. You can even use an earbud. I know we were using those to actually that would work, wouldn't it? Switch it out at the end of the oh that's they're all paper now, aren't they? They're not yeah, they're not card. Oh, that's better though. I can see that though. So that's a bit drying a bit. So yeah, you can take off the top with something that's a little bit more a bit sharper. So there's lots of little things we can add in. So I'm just going to start to go in with a little bit of this background, and I've gone in. You tend to need to have enough mixed up, is what I would say, when you've tested your colours, so that it gives you a good coverage. Because what can happen is if you don't have enough mixed up, then what can happen is you can end up with like patches where it dries. So if you're wanting to keep it all more even, then you can go in with a nice flat brush. If you've got a big A4, if you've got A4, a nice big flat brush works really well for kind of covering larger areas and kind of getting an equal mix. Because my paper's small, I'm just going in with a flat brush at the sorry, a round brush. So I'm just going to kind of come in here with this really nice colour. I just like the tone of this pinky brown, really like, and that's what I'd say to you as well, just use what you really like. I'm going to go right up to the edges of my paper, and I'm just going to move that really nice and quickly. Really load up your brush, that's the key. There's plenty on your brush. Bring it all the way down. And anywhere else, so that's quite thin. I've thinned mine quite down. There's a little bit there. But whilst I'm doing that, I'm just keeping an eye out. I'm working quite quickly. I'm just keeping an eye out on this little bit I was talking about here. It looks like it's reflecting a bit of light, and I'm just going to lift that out now a little bit so that I know that we're getting that nice reflection on the table and anywhere else I can see. So just underneath where those lights are shining, I'm going to lift a bit out of there as well. And there's a tiny bit by this book. So we can do those things and lift those out as we go. And then just kind of filling in some of these gaps. Now it's darker, it comes down darker there. I'm still getting a good coverage in. And then a little bit behind the mug as well. Here. And then got a little bit between. It's really lovely, this bit. Really enjoy actually watercolours. So nice to be able to move them so freely around the page. That's how they differ, isn't it, from some of the other mediums. They're just so watery, you can just kind of push it around, and that's what you're doing really with it, pushing it around the page. So I'm just looking, is there anything else I need to take out? Yeah, I'm just going to lift out a little bit by the edge of this mug here. Just a bit up here as well. And there's a little bit of quite a light bit here, so I'm going to lift that bit out there too. And that's all we're doing as we go, and we're just kind of just making these decisions about what comes in. Now it's still quite damp, so we're working fairly quickly with that. So I'm going to do the same here, come in with these areas here. So I'm going to bring in these in, just leaving a little bit around the light. And again, I'm looking in what do I want to take out. So I am at this point going to take out, just going to kind of roll my tissue up like this. I'm just going to take out these lines that are a little bit, oops, just sort that out. Make more kind of lines in that with this bit of tissue. And we can go through, we can always go through and pop some back in as well, which is what we tend to do. So I'm just looking in here now, and I'm going to look at where the shadowy areas are and get some of these slightly darker, redder, more reddy shadows mixed up with some of those colours that we was looking at before. Decide how thin down I want it. Okay, this is going in with a little bit more intensity, but not quite as much. Keep testing my colours, so I'm happy with them. It's almost a bit red, more red. Okay, I'm going to go in with this. And so what I'm going to start to do is just start to drop in some of these shadowy areas around where I've gone. It's quite dark up the back. And again, it's deciding how much you want to, how much you want to make it darker. Sometimes people don't like it too much of a contrast. And again, that's something we're working out as we go. So I'm just dropping in some of these darker areas of paint. It'll look a bit funny at the minute because we haven't got anything as a contrast. But we will have shortly. Again, I'm looking around, are there any other darker areas? Well, there's some a little bit under here where this coffee cup is. And mine's still a bit damp at the edges here. What I'm going to do is go in with this even darker colour where it's very dark. I'm doing this while it's still wet because I don't want a really harsh line, and I'm going to pull it out, pull it around. Because it's similar tones, it's not in danger of getting really muddy. Now, if there was a different colour on here, then we'd have to really consider, it's a little bit like the pastel. If it was like blue tones or yellow tones, then it's going to all get in a muddy mess. But because we're using kind of brownish tones, it's not too bad. So I'm just kind of pulling some of these out and pushing them in right under here where it's much darker underneath this fabric. It makes a lot more sense once we've actually got the other things in place as well. But and then we've got a bit of a shadow coming around there where the mug is, between the mug and the book. So I'm going to get that shadow in, just because I can see it. And it's going over, the other areas that we've already done, because we're working dark to light. What else have we got here? A little bit more, it's quite dark at the back here underneath there. So I'm going to go in with this dark here, just avoiding over my wires. And again, I'll go into this in a little bit more detail once we do the wires actually, but I'm just kind of working up to, that's behind, up to where these red bits are that we're working on this at the top. That's still quite light there. Yeah, and it's quite dark here under this book, so I am going to go in here. We've put enough water so I can move that around still, but to show it's going underneath the book there. It's building up and it's so lovely, such a nice topic, and really relaxing. It's very dark down this side, and again you'll have to decide how dark do you want to go, and sometimes it's trial and error. You start a bit lighter, I always think you can always build it up, but it's a bit difficult the other way around. So right under there it's really dark. Dark under there. and then you can decide once you kind of where you are with that, whether you want to add more or not. I'm going to add a bit more. I don't mind a strong contrast, but as I said, not everyone does like that. So just make sure you like it. You can always go back in later when it's dry to do that as well. There's no, saying that you have to do it whilst it's wet. And I'm just getting hints that there's a slightly in between this, slightly the kind of slightly warmer colour coming in here. I'm just going to mix that in a little bit as well whilst it's still damp. There we go. And I'll come back to that. So we just like, this is all we're doing is we're building up each area like that. Okay, pour things in and pour things out. I'm just blending at the top, if you see here, because I had a bit of a patchy area. Didn't really I wanted to make it more blended, not be, and kind of just diffuse into it. So I'm just softening the edge down there. It's not quite dry, so it works still. Just with a clean, wet brush to kind of diffuse those colours into each other. You can even do it like where it's a bit darker if you want to as well. Or you can keep it linear. Everyone's so different with the way they like to do the style of things. If you don't, if you want it, you're happy for it to be linear, that's absolutely fine. Okay. There we go. So, so we're making a start in an area. I'm going to go in, I think, with, I might go in with the top next. I think that's just for me, it's very practical because I'm left-handed. I tend to sit over my work quite a bit. But even if you're right-handed, you might end up going over. So I'm actually going to get some of the top of this done first, get the cup and this glass in, and then some of it around it, and then I'll come back and finish this last, so I'm not over the top whilst it's drying of this book. So I'm going to go in, I think I'm going to go in with the lights next behind, so I can make sure that those are in. So again, it's choosing a colour. Now, if it depends whether you want to go with white, I'm going to try and go in with a bit of a pinky colour, but I'm going to keep the ends of it white. So I'm going to leave all the ends and I'll build those up in a bit. But I'm going to go in, let's see if we can get a mix of the pinky colour. Now, if you're struggling to make up the pink that you want, I mean, I'm going to go in with a bit of white as well. So I'm just going to point it out. Now I've looked at that. I've mixed some blue in there from this morning. So I've got a blue tint. So I'm just going to get rid of that. I don't want blue in it. I'm going to go in, get some more white again. If your water's too muddy, then obviously get yourself, if you're using white or a very light colour, get yourself some more water, because otherwise similar to it can just kind of muddy things up. And then I'm going to go in, have a little look at the reds. Let's see. It's quite a pinky pink, isn't it, that? So that looks more like it needs to be a fairly ordinary red, I'd say. If it's a very orangey red, it might give you more of a peachy colour. If it's a very cool red, like a cooler red, like alizarin crimson, it might give you a different red. So I'm going in with just kind of what I'd call a standard red, really. Right. But you don't have to make it pink, that's just me. So I'm just, again, test the colour on there. Okay, yeah, happy with that. And I'm just going to go in just over these wires, really, because they're all fairly, it looks, I can't see too much contrast at the moment. And also, I'm looking at these, the light covers. That's the only way where I can see a little bit of contrast. You can go in with a smaller brush as well if that's easy for you. So get those in, because it's light. Also, pink's a very light colour, so it's a little bit difficult to do it over the top of this, this darker colour here. What we can do though, is on those covers, if you want to get in that much, you don't have to, by the way, but if you wanted to get into that much detail, then And what you can do is like look at the covers where they get a little bit of light shining on them. You can even lift out the area where you get a bit of contrast and a bit of lighter, because each of them, you know, there might be a little bit of a touch point in it where you think, oh, it's a bit slightly lighter. I'm just going to lift those little bits out. Don't worry if you don't see everything the first time. It does like we'll build up our knowledge bank of like looking for all these little bits. If you're just happy to paint them in, just paint them in. So where you've got any other wet paint that's dark, that's why you might need to be a little bit careful that the colours don't run. And painting between those, I'm going to leave till this is entirely dry to get these very dark areas in. I'm just going to bring it in as much. It's really nice, isn't it? Some of those wires. And there's a bit of a tangle, isn't there, of lots of them here as well, which is interesting. I'm just going to pop a massive pink there, and I'll just paint some darks between them later on. And even through the back of there, the light ones, I'm going to just pop that in. So it'll be difficult to see them until we've got the contrast of the back of the area as well, so don't worry about that either. Just get used to moving the paint around and things as well, back into it. Okay, so I'm going to pop in this cup here. I'm leaving this rim, I'm leaving that entirely. But I'm going to pop in some of the other. So when you've got a glass, what you're looking at is the other light colours in there. So I'm just going to leave, to pop myself, like just make sure I leave a whole circle where I can put that bulb behind it. But I'm looking at the different colours of blues here. And again, you know, you might have, depends what you've got in your kit. Some blues like ultramarine, we were talking about those last week, will give you more of colour like that. Sorry, this is like a Prussian blue, which is a bit more turquoisey, slightly. Or you'll have like an ultramarine, which is our typical ultramarine colour. So if you're wanting something to be a bit more greeny in there, a bit more turquoisey, then you can just take one of your blues. If you haven't got like a blue that will thin down to a turquoise, you can just find a bit of green, lighter green, and drop it in. And see, I've just dropped in this bit emeraldy green in there into my Prussian blue, and it's given me, maybe need to put a bit of blue back in there actually, but what it's given me is a bit more of the colour that I'm after with that here. And you can make up your own colours anyway. So you can either thin them down, or so you thin them down a bit further with a bit more water, which is more like that. So I'm going to do that around the side here, over the top. Oops, just gone over that with my hand. Just so we're getting in. So I'm leaving that dark bit here. I'm just going to get these shapes in. Put a little bit around the inside of the glass as well, just down there. And then I'm looking for some slightly kind of brighter ones really. So I'm going to just load up the pigment to get those on my brush. And where it's much darker, like that, just pop those in to get the shapes that I can see. A lot with glass is just recreating the shapes. And then I'm going to take a very light version of that. And I am just going to pop that kind of just a little bit on the rim. And then again, we're building up these colours with this glass to see what we can see. And then where you get these slightly darker colours in the glass, then it's just deciding when you're going to put them in. So I'm going to go for a really much more muted brown in there, but I've got to be really careful that I don't kind of have it all mixing in with the blue, because I will end up with this muddy mess. So I might have to wait till it's dried a bit, or I'm just very tentatively going to the edge there to get that in. And that one there. And I need to take them back out because I've just realised I've gone right over the top of that light colour. So I'm getting that bulb in. So I'm just going to lift a circular shape out whilst it's still wet, like that. And then I've got somewhere to go with it. So it's at the moment we've just got lots of patches of colour really. That's fine because we can put the shadows and things in when it's a bit more dry. Like there's all this dark shadow in here. It might be dry enough. So I'm going to go in with a nice dark, almost as dark as I've gone down here. I'm going to put, in fact, it might even be darker at the back there. So let's see. No, I'm going to do that all in one go because it's very similar all across the back. So I want to get these bright lights in before I do that. So we'll build it up around there now. What I might pop in with a thinner brush is just some kind of the glow that comes on the side here. So I'm now looking for some colour. So when we did the lights, we did some lights last week at night, and we did like a bright orange and then a really, really bright yellow in the middle, or you can leave that white if you want to. I'm going to go for the bright orange, I think, again, like last week. So I want the glow around the edge. So I'm just going to test a nice bright warm orange, okay, and then I'm going to test very, very bright yellow, but I'm putting quite a lot of yeah, maybe not quite. Let's try another yellow. I didn't really like that one. Try that one. That's a bit too warm, a bit too similar. So I'm going to see if I can go back to this lemony yellow one I've got in here. Okay, that might work. Or you can just leave it white next to it. Or you can even try adding a little bit of pastel white in there. That's the other option. Let's try that. Yeah, that's looking a bit brighter than it. And do that. Add some more white into it, make it a bit more. There we go. Okay. So let's have a look at kind of getting these nice lights in there. So I'm going to have to go light to dark. So I'm going to have to go with on the ones that are brighter, the centres. I want to get those in first, and I may even leave the very centre. May even just take that out with a bit of a bud so that we get a bit of white in there as well. I might even just kind of dab it on like that. So I've got a little bit on. I'm just going in there. It looks a bit specific at the moment, doesn't it? But when we start building that brighter colour around it and we get the contrast, we'll start to feel that build up like we did last week with the pastels, although pastels are more intense, obviously. And then when we're feeling it's feeling dry enough, or again, you can actually blend the two a little bit, because what you might get is a bit of a diffuse light. You'll just have to try it out. That's all we can do is like say, okay, how's it going to look if I add it now? And also how bright do I want it? So you can go in with a very bright, or you can go in and thin it down a little bit. So I'm kind of going to just try blending it a little bit together. Oops. And then I'm just going to take out, oops, a little bit. It might actually just be a bit too damp still. But we'll see. So I'm trying to get this lovely light to diffuse onto the bit we've already done as well. Hence leaving a little bit of a space to do that, so we get this nice glow. And I'm going to try and just spread it around a little bit more. You can always build up the intensity of it. If it's not quite bright enough and you want a little bit more, which I'm going to do, I'm going to put more pigment on my brush for this one. All we're doing is we're just playing with the colours, just experimenting with those. I'm going to bring those down a bit onto the table, because they almost, when you put them over the top like that, they diffuse over the top of the table, don't they? It's really nice. So we're just looking at all the different colours that it creates as well. And then we'll sort of lift out a little bit of here. And getting the edge. So we can get, once we're in a position where things are dry enough, we can start to kind of build around the edges of things as well to get those lovely glows. And we'll notice it much more when we put the dark against it, which we haven't really got in yet, but that's fine. It's just a work in progress. So bit of glow there. And wherever else you can see it. So this even comes onto the fabric, this glow. Get that lovely area onto it there. It's a bit of a have faith moment, this one, because we know once we get the other colours in, it will be great. But we can't quite see it straight away. Well, so we're just building it up until we're happy we've got, it's still obviously drying around here. So I'm coming there last with that very dark colour, and then just work way down. I'm going to get some of this in as well. But again, I'm going to come back to that once I've let all this area underneath dry. So sometimes you won't work out what you come to next, just depending on where you know what you want to dry properly. So we're looking at, looking in the mug and things like that. So again, looking at what colour the mug is. There's some lovely tones on there. Some are lighter, some are darker. Do you want a pinky colour? Do you want do you want a totally different colour to the colours you've got going on there? So it's just, you could put beige in, you can put anything you want. That's the beauty of it. I think I want to go a bit more, go back to this pink, put a bit of this pink in, but make it probably just slightly brighter than those lights, but then bring in some of these lovely cooler brown tones as well, that we used over there. So just mixing up on my palette here some of a bit of the yellowy white tints that I had in there and then coming in with a slightly different colour pink, actually, is what I'd say. So I'm going in with the Alizarian Crimson, so you can vary the type of colour. So let's have a look. So that's got yellow in, it's got a bit more peachy. Let's see. Yeah, I'm quite happy with that. So again, you've got to decide. I'm going to do the inside rim like this, keeping the top nice and clear. And then I'm pretty much going to just paint some stripes down here. It's really loosely because I don't want it to be, I'm not going to try and make it really highly accurate because it's an artist impression, but enough so that we know that the mug has got a rib on it. I mean, you could just paint the whole thing if you wanted to pink and then go into it with the other lines, but I'm just going to go in the other way around. Again, it's entirely up to you, your approach with that. So if you find like just drawing all the individual lines a bit too, laborious, just go straight in and put it all one colour if you want, and then you can change it by adding the contrast in darker colours. I'm looking at the top of this mug, making it a bit more pinky. Some of it's a bit pink in places and some of it's not, so I'm kind of want to keep a little bit of that light. So even within here, there's quite a level of contrast. There's a few kind of more patchy, darker areas, and I'm going to try and drop those in whilst it's a bit damp. It does look a little bit like it's a proper pot mug, doesn't it? It's being crafted. So sometimes you do get those natural markings in there. So I'm going to drop those in. Quite darker at the bottom, but that might run a little bit at the moment. So I'll see if I want to hang on. This sort of thing. The good thing about still life is you can keep it moving. With if we were doing like a watercolour, we'd have to keep it and then wait until a patch dries before we can add something. So the beauty of this is we don't have to wait. So let's see what we have. And we have a nice, like a really hard line there, don't we? But I think that is a bit too damp at the moment there. But we'll pop it a bit in. So what I'm doing here is I'm just creating a little bit because there's a bit of shadow around this edge. So what we're doing is looking at where those shadows are. I think the only thing people say sometimes they don't like about watercolour is if they don't feel like they've got any definition. You can easily put the definition in. We just need to look at where the shadows go. Or you don't have to, that's the other thing, like lots of people like it for the lack of definition as well. So it's just finding out what you like when we're experimenting like this. Quite dark down this side. So I think maybe let's try and to go in with some of these darker shadows now between, because it's all quite dark at the bottom here. So I'm not worried about dropping this in too much because it is quite, it loses its definition at the bottom and gets a bit, does get quite dark. I just add in some few little patches in now. As I said, you can drop patches in. You don't have to put the detail of the linear cup in. It's entirely up to you what you put in there. Building up the shadows. Now you might be able to see, you know, there might be some on the rim as well. So we're just working our way through. I will go in and pop a few of the darker areas in as well, for example. Starting now, I think that's drier, so I'm going to pop in this really dark one above the reflection here, where we get, you know, just above where the reflection on the drink is. That gives us a little bit of a, you know, an idea as well that there's water or a drink in there. And then dropping in just some, where it's much darker, I'm going to drop in some of those because I can see now I would like to make some of these, the contrast stronger. So I am. At the bottom here. Okay, so again, you know, elements of the handle, you can look at where you want to pop a bit more shadow in, those kinds of things. But I'm going to soften that down because it's a bit too much of a harsh line for me. So I'll soften it down a bit. Same up here. And we're just looking at all of the little bits of marks and things we've got on there. And again, you know, where the outside of this rim is, you might want to just pop a little bit. I tend not to go all the way around with it. What I tend to do is just highlight a couple of the areas to kind of get the suggestion that that coffee cup's going, you know, the rim there is catching the light. But definitely pop in something on the inside so that we do get a little bit of the definition. But again, you don't have to. You can make it, you know, especially when you're working big, you can make it more of a suggestion there, can't you? And leave that to dry a little bit more there. And so we just, you know, we're continuing to build all of these things up. And And I think I'll take a pause there and see how everyone's getting on. Okay, so we've got a few little elements left here. I'm going to come into this area where the blanket is. So there's lots of different ways of thinking about how, how to go in with this. We can use different kind of areas, different kind of like stippling techniques to get the shape, the shadow, sorry, the markings and things, or you can go in with a different brush entirely. If you've got like some different brushes that have got, I've just picked up a fan which is more for trees really, but there's all sorts of ways of kind of looking at it. So I think the biggest thing really for the moment is what we need to get is the shape of it as well, and also to think of a tone. So I'm going to try and go in with this kind of colour, which is really, I think, to get that. My water's getting a bit muddy actually, but we'll see how we go with it. Probably go in with a bit of yellow ochre, which is a warmer yellow one. There. Most sets have got something that's a bit yellow ochre. Got one over here that looks like yellow ochre as well. I'm just going to put that in that corner, which is it's darker. But I want to take out, so the other option, I'll show you a different way of doing it as well. So the other option is to add a bit of brown to that, or vice versa. It's still quite warm, so you can add a bit of a different brown once it's got a bit darker. And then you can thin that right out if you want to. You can do that. Let's see if we can thin it out. Still a bit browny, that one, isn't it? So then just go in with some white. See if that's a near fit. So that's looking much better. So I'm going to pop that on there. That's looking more pastel-y. So that's so what we need really is a couple of tones of that, because we've got a light one and a dark one. And I'm just going to go in all over with the light to start with. Whole thing. I'll just take the edge off here. I'm just going to cover it whilst it's really damp. Now, obviously, my pink lamps have dried a bit, so it makes it a little bit easier. I'm going to keep this fairly even to start with. But what I want to do is actually add in the depth and the shape with, getting these kind of different shades in a minute. So within this section that I'm just working on here, what I'm going to do is lift out anywhere, say across the top, that I think, where it's highlighted. Usually it's anything sticking out is where the light catches. So I'm going to go all the way across the top of there to start with, just lifting it out, kind of around this corner, lifting that out across the top of that, just so I can get a suggestion of that there's a fold in the material and the shape. There's a little bit at the top of here just before there's a shadow. I haven't put the shadows in yet. I'm doing the light bits first. Anywhere else I can see, definitely across there. And you can do that with a brush as well. You can get a clean damp brush and just lift out the colour. That's another thing you can do. And then kind of around this edge, dab that and lift that out. So it's going to look a bit strange. It's got these kind of curly bits, a bit there in the middle as well. It's kind of, and then a bit there. So we're starting to get some kind of shape in there. And then work into each bit. I'm going to go in with the shadow now. So I'm going in with a contrast of a kind of a darker brown actually, but I don't want to go really, really harsh with it to start with. So what I will probably do is go halfway and mix. You can see what I'm doing there. So I've got my dark brown, but then I maybe go halfway with this light colour I've already used here. So I've got a mid colour midway between. So where it's just a bit dark, so it might be where, you know, something, I've got a bit of stitching or something. Or underneath, you know, where you get a bit of shadow underneath. So I'm just kind of playing with the shape of where we get a bit of depth here. And I'm just starting to kind of curl some of these slightly lighter browns around where you get a bit more of a shadow. So I'm not looking at the texture really of it yet. I'm just looking at the shadows in there. And then I'm going to go in with the much darker shadow that are right in the middle. So we get a real contrast. So this, like this bit in the middle that curls over, for example, here. So that we know that it's kind of dipping down in the middle. And then between, you know, you get that between get that between those two as well here. So it won't make as much sense until we've got all of those in place. But it's basically, you get that much darker between any of the folds. This is how I would do it anyway, but you know, there are lots of other ways of doing it. We've taken out the light, we've got like that kind of medium contrast, and I'm just making sure we've got those dark shadows in so we can see. And it goes quite dark behind this book.
Becky, is that black with brown or just brown for the dark?
So we're kind of building up, and obviously I've only got half the blanket. We'll keep putting the rest of that blanket in and everything. And again, it depends on how dark you actually want to go with it when you're doing it. So if you want to get some texture in there, you know, you want to show these kinds of patterns, then the way I would do it is I'd just get another similar brown to the one I've been using, to be fair, and just go in, and I think I'm just going to dab some, you know, just follow the pattern down. I don't want to spend hours doing that, but I'm just, you know, kind of just creating a few of the lines that go around and follow it, like, just so that you get some of the shape into the blanket, really. And it feels a bit like a bit more kind of wool-like. So I'm not going to do all of it. This is kind of where the suggestion comes in. But I'm just kind of putting a few broken lines on there. And then it just creates the shape of the blanket a little bit as well. So we're over the folds and things like that, you tend to get these, you know, a little bit of pattern. And then we kind of, you know, we start to realize it's a blanket. Yeah, you can pop more in if you want to, just kind of get a bit of texture in with your brush. But some people don't like, it's too much detail for some people. So I think it's trial and error. Have a little go. Is it less or more that you would want to put in? And I think that's just all you can do as we're going along, is just think, is it, less or more? What do I like? I mean, the main thing, obviously, I've only just got like one in, is to get the rest of that blanket in, really. And I'm just going to do that with this other bit here. And as it goes to the back, we see less detail all the time. So I'm just going to go exactly what I've just done, just paint all of that lighter colour in, and then I'll darken some of the areas and lift out the lighter ones. And we're just not seeing much at all in there. Like, not much detail over here. It's just kind of a haze now. It's becoming a bit of a haze of different colours, which is how it should be as we're going away, because we don't want that to pop forwards. So all we can do is just draw kind of the edge up to where we can see where we think the blanket might end, which is about here. That's a massive other things, isn't it, there? And then again, if you've got any really light areas, like that bit in the middle is quite light here, isn't it? So like there, I'd be inclined to kind of lift out some of that. And then just going to go in again, just look at some of the shapes that we're getting in there, drop them in. And get the right colour on there. Let me start. There we go. There it is. Just some of them might be a bit darker. Where we get some of the markings, or we get some of the turn in the fabric. Just dropping that in. But again, even at the back here where there's some twists and turns, we're not really seeing a huge amount of detail. We can see some patches of darker colours up the back here, because we get a contrast between whatever it is that's folded right over. I think it must be a cushion or something on a chair at the back there, but it goes really dark. But we can't actually see too much detail of what's actually going on there. So again, you can dab in some of these just a few little patterns, not much here. And there's less and less detail as we get, as I said, as we get towards the back, so we can't really see what's going on here, just with this little blanket there. Really, when we get the book, I think, in and everything. I'm just going to soften some of this down. And then pop some of these much darker areas in the back now that's dry. Just get a slightly thinner brush. Because again, that will give us a bit of that picture where it's very dark at the back here. Starts to fill in some of the gaps. Quite literally, we're like, ah, yeah, that must be the back of the table. And then even in the cup, again, we can then, that'll start to make more sense. And around the cup. Because we've got these much darker areas out here. Starts to create the edge of the mug and everything actually a little bit more. Yeah, darker areas in there. So just keep going, popping those in. All the way across where you can see them. And then, you know, even in between here, we've got some darker areas. It just helps our brain kind of work out exactly what's going on because there's so many little finicky bits. Creates a bit of the shape of some of the things we can see as well. And then we can come back in, you know, and just have a little look at what's going on. You know, have we got what we need on there? Neaten up around, you can even neaten up if you need to, around the edge of some of these you know, around the edge, kind of where this blanket is and things like that. And if you wanted to darken any areas, you know, when you're looking in and you think, actually, now that's dark, I can see some of these folds in this blanket now need to be a little bit darker so that I can see what's happening and where they're dipping down, etc. Then, you know, that's another time to start to kind of fill the gaps with those in. But, you know, you don't always have to do that. Not everybody wants to go in, as I said, with really dark colours. It's just personal choice. And I'm going to leave that now, that area, for a moment. I think what I would perhaps do is just neaten up the edge of the cables, just kind of pop a bit of shadow around it. But I'm going to come on to the book because what will happen, really, it's just these particular ones that I would want more kind of more definition around the ones at the front. So you can kind of, because if we know what the ones at the front are doing, we know what the ones at the back are doing, even if they're nice and loose. So here we've got like lots of shadow in and around.
Becky,
Just give me a moment. Okay, so there's lots we can work into the book with, but you know, if we start, say, for example, we're starting light to dark. You know, when we look in the book, there's lots of shadows and things between the pages that we can pop on, but that'll be like later. So it depends on whether you want any kind of a colour on there or whether you want to just leave your page blank to start with. It's entirely up to you, or you want to put wash on. If you want a kind of a creamy wash, that's fine, but sometimes the papers are that colour, aren't they? So let's have a look. So if I popped a tiny bit of, I might just pop a little bit of a kind of a yellow edge to mine where where it is a bit lighter, where some of those lights are kind of shining on it, and then, you know, under here as well. So you don't have to put a colour on there if you can see any little tints. I've got a little bit down the middle here. a little bit, there's a bit of shadow coming over there. So you can actually pop a little bit of shadow in these. I'm just going to pop some kind of between where that center line is. But again, it's quite loose. I'm not going to do it like absolutely perfect. It's supposed to be a representation. And so we're just kind of building up some of these colors on the actual book itself. And then for the writing, then it's entirely up to you. But I would actually, we had some really good ideas this morning as well, is to choose a color that's not too dark. Because and then we'll just kind of give an artist impression of what that will look like. So you could try grey, a bit of grey, so a bit of black and a bit of white together, or you can try kind of a bit of purple and white. It's entirely up to you. So just get the tone that you're happy with. That's probably okay. Or I might go even lighter actually. I'm going to try to start a bit lighter. So adding a little bit more water to my mix. Try that one. And then just start to kind of almost create just the impression that there's right in there, just by kind of wiggling your brush a little bit. You can almost create those little, it almost looks like it could be a poetry book or something that. So you can almost, and because there's a bend in this page, you can kind of have it going, get a little bend in it as well. So we're not actually writing anything, but it does look like there's a fair bit of writing in there, which is nice. And you can do as much or as little as you want. You know, you can even have it like as a notebook, somebody's writing notes or whatever. It can be any kind of book. And then the other side is even lighter, isn't it? Because it's half of it's in the light. So I would probably have the bit that's kind of bended, you know, maybe even lighter. I'm just following that curve round. But then I might make it just that bit darker as it's in the light here. So it almost kind of follows what would happen when we get a bit more light. And you just kind of go through the book, just doing that. We're creating a bit of a curve, so it feels like it is curved. You can follow the direction it's looking on the picture as well. And that's kind of where we are really with it, I would say. And again, here you're getting a lot of light down here, so you might even go even lighter as it's coming where the light's kind of shining on the page. You know, it can get even lighter, so you can't tell, because sometimes that happens, isn't it, when light shines on something, you just can't see it at all. That's probably what I would add, really, for that book. I'm just trying to think what else you could pop on there. That's one way of doing it. I mean, you could be really precise if you wanted to, but I think to keep it in keeping with a watercolour that's very watery and loose, if you've done a fairly loose colour, you want it to be fairly loose as well. The only thing I'd do is I would build up the colour on this book that I can see, so that there's a bit of an orangey yellow glow under there. So I'm actually going to go in with that orangey glow between the pages there. So we've got that in there. Just spread it out a little bit. And then, you know, where we haven't got that kind of a glow, bit of a glow on this side. So we're just just observing the kind of colours. I'm not going to really try and do, you know, too much kind of detail in there. What I will put in is where we get the definition, the darks, because some of these are quite as dark as some of these areas up here, aren't they? So I probably will go in, although actually before I do that, I'm going to go in with a darker colour in there full stop. So I might go in with a reddy brown or even a bit of a yellowy red. Let's see what that colour gives us. A bit warm is that, so bring us up over here. So yeah, so maybe I'll drop in to start with where these pages are already going darker, like that. The sense that they are. Like that, with just a kind of a tinge. And just pop some of these in on the edge on the side of the book. And then break this little bit up. So we go in even darker with the darkest kind of a colour that you want to use there. And I'm not going to put loads in, I'm just going to kind of go, because what you tend to find, isn't it, is you get some of these, you get a natural separation where some of them, you know, where you get a kind of a gap where there's a group of pages. And the same on here. There's just a couple like that. Just so that we've got some and then, you know, again, there might be a little bit of writing behind there, and then just kind of sticking with this bit that we've got there, you know, again, it's looking at you know, whatever colour you think that's going to be. It could be bluish, couldn't it? Or it might be just a really dark, kind of in between where this book is here, where this book changes, where the real where the spine is underneath here. I think some people picked out blues and things today. I'm going quite quickly now, but yeah. So we're just kind of defining some of these areas of the book. But you know, again, it's like how loose do you? So if you've gone quite loose, you don't really want to make it too kind of tight. So I'm just going to go in with a little bit and another little bit, just a very tiny tinge of just a bit of warmth coming through there underneath there as well. I might have to lift it a little bit out because it's a little bit too warm. So yeah, I mean, we can make it like that glowy kind of a lovely colour, can't we? Make that really nice like that. And then just kind of see some writing behind there. And that's it really. We'll just come back to that and just looking at, is there any way we need to make darker? Is there any way we need to make lighter? Certainly between, for example, you know, between the mug and the book. That's what we're looking for, is the balance across the painting. You know, where else can I see anything that needs a little bit of definition? But it's just really joyful, isn't it, to have such a lovely palette of colours. And then of course make sure you'll look at that again another day, because you'll probably find that you appreciate it even more the next day. So I hope that's been helpful really. We'll take a last pause there.